workplace. Our speaker for the event is Ms. Sanya Arora. She is an independent advocate who has been practicing in courts and tribunals across Delhi and NCR over 3 years. She has handled matters pertaining to sexual harassment at workplace, domestic violence, and cruelty. In pursuit of her goals to cultivate a nurturing environment for budding legal professionals, she has established a teaching law firm, Lawchakra. Being an avid supporter of women's rights, she has been the presiding officer of the Internal Complaints Committee at Lawctopus and also conducts frequent gender sensitization workshops to spread awareness, bring about change at the grassroots level, pitch and implement effective, non-discriminatory and anti-harassment policies at workplace. I would like to call Ms. Sanya Arora. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Karishma. It's wonderful to see so many people. I wasn't expecting so many people on a Sunday. So it's great to see the enthusiasm. And thank you, Pink Legal Panache, for having me again to talk about something that all of us agree on being extremely, extremely important conversation to be had. Before we begin, I'm sure that now you know a little bit about myself, about me, but I would like to know a little bit about yourself. So in the chat box, can you please help me out and let me know if you're working, if you're studying, where are you joining us from, how are you feeling today, or what made you join this webinar? Because I see a lot of new people, and it's okay if you don't want to turn on your video, but I would love to establish that initial connection and equation with you so we can have a really, really productive session together. I do not want this to be a monologue. Let us please keep this a dialogue and a conversation so we can talk to each other. And you have different ways to talk to me. You can write in the chat box if that is what you're comfortable with. You can unmute yourself and you can talk to me directly. However you're comfortable, please just do not forget to interact. Okay, so Ruchika, Abhishek, Ishani, Akanksha. Akanksha is a student. She joined the webinar because she'll be stepping out into the world of workplace soon. That's amazing to be going prepared. You know, when I was your age, when I was at that stage in my life, I had absolutely no idea what was happening and how things can take a toll on you when you least expect them to. And especially being a woman, being a girl, I'm not saying that this is something that requires any additional sympathy or any additional understanding per se, but it's because of everything that's happened over generations that we need these special laws. We need the special rights to bring women at par with other genders and other professions, with people who are working, people who are doing whatever in life. So we do need these special laws and special rights for women. And today we're going to discuss just that. But that doesn't mean that, I've had a lot of discussions and conversations, and I want to get that out of the way before we begin. It doesn't mean that they are anti-men or anti any other gender per se, but it's the topic for the day that we're going to discuss the rights of women. Also, you have to accommodate the fact that because these rights and these laws have not really been implemented as ideally as they should have, that we still need to talk about it as much. I see a lot of men also here, so that's a great thing. We need people to understand and to educate themselves, because it's not just about one gender, and these days we don't really have just two genders. There are all kinds of genders and all kinds of identities that we feel comfortable identifying ourselves with, and that is all right. Everything's all right, but as long as we have that mindset, the growth mindset and the inclusive mindset, to let people be the way they are and also respect them for who they are. So I hope that we're going to respect each other, and we're going to try to understand what these rights stand for, and just beware that just because there are some special laws and some special rights that exist for women, it doesn't always mean, and it doesn't always imply that they will be abused. That's true of any other law, any other right. And women have been it's the journey. I'm sure most of us are women here. We don't really even need to say it out loud, but the journey, the way it has been, we've been taught to really also be focusing on where our place in the world is, and also talk about the duties that we have. So there's another very common notion, and I hope that we can have a discussion on that towards the end of the session, that because there are these laws and these rights for women, women have abused those rights and those laws. But I strongly believe that that's true of any law, that's true of any right, that's true of any provision that anybody has. So it's not specific to women, in my opinion, and that is something that I would like to have a discussion with you all on. And just because, okay, I've prepared a presentation for you, we're going to move step by step. And during the presentation, if you have any specific questions, please put them in the chat box. And I'm sure people from Pink Legal Panache team, they will be keeping an eye out for your questions, and they'll be making sure that all your questions are addressed towards the end of the session. If while I'm going on and you feel that, no, I need to talk about this right now, I cannot really go forward with the session before this is clear, then feel free to unmute yourself and talk to me directly. Feel free to interrupt. There are no wrong questions. There are no wrong ways to express your opinions. Just as long as you're mindful of everybody who's in this room with you, everybody who has a journey too, just respect them for who they are, respect yourself, and with full dignity, full respect, you can ask any question that you deem fit. So I hope that's okay. If you guys think that I can begin with the presentation and we can begin with the session, please write yes in the chat box. I need to be feeling like I'm talking to humans. Now we are going offline, but since we are doing these sessions online still, I would like to know that you guys are there. Okay, awesome. Karishma, Jay, Anushka, Brinda, Akanksha, Kavya, Dia. Awesome, guys. Awesome. So let's begin with our session. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry in advance for the disturbance that you may be hearing in the background. There's a construction going on. So if you want me to repeat anything, please let me know, Akanksha, Anushka, Karishma. So today we are going to talk about rights of working women in India. And we're going to also incorporate how virtual workplace comes into place. So it's not just pertaining to physical workplaces. The laws that we have are wide enough, and they are unique enough to be accommodating with changing circumstances, to be changing with the changing times. So the laws that we have, they're not static when it comes to POSH Act. I'm sorry, there's some disturbance coming. I think it's Deepak, Dipanjali. I'll just wait. Okay, thank you. So the rights of working women in India, and during the pandemic, all the circumstances that were happening, it's really sad that even though we had virtual workplaces and remote working, but somehow sexual harassment that used to happen at work, that was prevalent at work, it followed in virtual spaces as well in different forms. And we're going to discuss that also today, because now when you'll be entering into the workforce, and I would like to know from you also, from all of you, if you are still studying, or if you are working, or if you have faced anything that's disturbing, even if you don't want to share the entire story, or even if you don't want to really talk about that, at least just let me know if you're working, or if you've ever interned, or if you are still a student and you never really worked officially ever. So even if you are an intern, even if you are not getting paid, even if you're going to just learn something as an apprentice, and even if you are in colleges, workplace harassment laws apply to you. So prevention of sexual harassment, it's not just prevention, it's also prohibition and redressal. So all the provisions of that act, along with the rules and regulations, they apply to everyone who is either even a domestic worker, a domestic helper, who is not getting paid, who's just an intern, who just happened to do a project with somebody and face something, And it also pertains to students, college students who are studying in different universities. And we're going to talk about that as well. Before we start with the nitty-gritties of the law and the rights that we should be aware of, I found this quote to be really, really inspiring, and I'm a huge fan of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm sure most of you also must have heard about her and must have been fans of her. She's just known to be the notorious RBG. So she said this once, that I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks. So when people say that, women have these rights and these laws that are favoring them and that are just to, make sure that they're getting a special place in the society while men are suffering and things like that, when you hear those kinds of arguments, just remember that it's not to give women a special place in the society. It's to give women the place that they deserve, that they should have gotten years and years ago. It's to make that wrong right, that we have these laws in place. And it's the fact that these laws have not been implemented properly, and that is why we still need them. We don't need them as a favor. We need them because the society has to do right by its people, regardless of their gender. So don't take this to mean some special favors that are being given to women, like toffees or chocolates being handed over to them for nothing. It's not that. These are the rights that they have earned. These are the rights that they deserve, and these are the rights that are yet to be fulfilled. The agenda for today is, first, how to make sure that you are in a healthy, happy, productive, and ethical work environment. It requires not just you knowing your rights, but you also knowing how the law works, how people work, how you can understand discrimination and harassment, how you can identify yourself as a harasser or a harassee. So it's not that women cannot be harassers. Recently, there was a judgment which said that same gender complaints can also be filed under POSH, under the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act. And although the act applies only to aggrieved women, so a woman who has faced any harassment at workplace, only she can file a complaint. But the complaint can be against another woman also who is in a powerful position. So it's not just that women are always on the suffering end, but there are women who can be in a powerful position, who may be abusing their powers, and they can also be held accountable under the act. And so identifying yourself as a harasser or a harassee, as a woman or a man, is very important in a workplace. Although there's a lot of debates going on and there's a lot of aid that is going towards making sure that these laws are gender neutral, making sure that at workplace all employees are treated equally, and there are non-discrimination policies, there are non-harassment policies that involve both men and women. It depends on the workplace that you're working in, but the law specifically tries to protect women, and not just from men but also from women. Then we are going to talk about the phases of dealing with it. If, God forbid, some form of harassment has taken place at workplace, what are the different phases that you may go through? What are the different things that you can do to tackle the situation, to tackle the problem that you have faced? And after that, finally, we'll talk about some other rights of working women other than sexual harassment at workplace. Now there's a message. Okay. Thank you, Karishma. So I know you all are very well read, and you all are very much aware of your rights and of your duties as well, and what it means to be harassed, what it means to be discriminated against. That's not something that you need any theoretical knowledge of. That is something that, as a woman, sadly, I am sure, and it happens with a lot of people that I've interacted with in one time or another, in one place or another. Every woman in one form of another has faced some sort of discrimination, some sort of harassment, and it's sad. But to understand what sexual harassment under this particular law amounts to, we need to understand the difference between discrimination and harassment. Not that the act does not incorporate discrimination also and harassment also. But to understand sexual harassment holistically, we need to understand the meaning of discrimination. So I'm sure you all know that discrimination is any prejudicial treatment, any unreasonable or unjust classification, just for being, a certain way, just for coming from a certain background, just for coming from a certain place, just for being a certain or identifying yourself with a certain gender identity, sexual orientation. So it can be any unreasonable or unjust way of treating you differently, treating you as others would not have been treated in your place had they not come from where you are coming from. So that is putting discrimination in very, very simple terms without any jargon. That if there is any unequal, unjust treatment given to you, that is detrimental to you, that is uh, something that only you are facing for no reason whatsoever, that is discrimination. And harassment is any kind of aggressive pressure, any kind of intimidation. Now, one thing just keep in mind, you don't always identify who can be harassing you at what point. You don't always understand what may be happening to you, because especially in workplace, the power dynamics are so skewed that a lot of the times you feel like, okay, this is something that you have to deal with if you are, because you are in that position, you are the employee, you are getting paid for something. A lot of the times we as women don't even have confidence in our abilities, in our achievements, in whatever we know and we don't know. So when somebody comes around and tells us that and if that person is in a position of power, if that person has, say, 5 years, 6 years experience, and they've earned a lot of degrees and accolades, and they have been around the world, and they come to you and you've just started working there, or if you're just interning there, you don't even know how the work is done yet. And if they tell you that, you know what, you know nothing, you are just really, really bad at this, you should quit, you should leave, you should not be here, you should really choose something else to do with your life, or anything like that. There are a lot of worse comments also that I'm avoiding right now. But these are just some examples, that have nothing to do with sex per se, that have nothing to do with sexual advances also, but that are just hostile words, and hostile, creating a hostile environment, and making sure that you're constantly under pressure, and you're constantly feeling like you have to please that person. And then you are also gaslit every now and then, every time you feel like, um okay, maybe it was my fault. Maybe if they'll say that, it's your fault that you did not pick up my call at 11:30 p.m. It was such an urgent matter and you refused to pick up my call, and because you were busy doing God knows what, then that is something very, very dangerous. And it's important for you to recognize it before it really begins in the full-fledged form. That you have to know where your boundaries are, where you feel that enough is enough, and beyond which limit you're not going to let anybody do or say anything to you. You have to recognize those boundaries very, very well. Only then you can protect yourself from these harassers, from these bullies, from people who are trying to gaslight you every now and then. This is not something that I'm telling you to really, view the entire world with those black tinted glasses, thinking that everybody around you is out to get you. No, you're not supposed to think like that or work like that. That will be another level of pressure that you'll be putting on yourself. So you'll not be able to really live or do anything in life. But at the same time, you have to strike the perfect balance between what others are saying to you, what is constructive feedback, how you're supposed to learn something, what are your boundaries, and where you stand in life, and what is something that nobody else can tell you. what is something that nobody else can do to you. You have to be very, very sure of that, and you have to strike that balance on your own on a daily basis in every space that you're in, whether you're in college, at home, at work, wherever you are. That's completely up to you. So now that I hope you have a basic understanding of what discrimination is and what harassment is, sexual harassment under the Act is somehow an amalgamation of both. It's not just, and contrary to popular belief, we think that sexual harassment pertains to people who
The woman
are
in workspace करके कल एक मैसेज एक
uh,
लड़की ने status डाला था.
hi Princey, thank you so much. Okay, so as I was saying, that sexual harassment can be very, very subjective. And when we're talking about sexual harassment at workplace, it doesn't just mean something that pertains to sex. Okay, it can be physical contact and advances. It can be demand or request for sexual favors. It can be sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, any other unwelcome physical act, verbal or non-verbal, or conduct of sexual nature. This is a definition that has been given under the Act of what pertains to sexual harassment. Now, if you read this carefully, you'll also observe that there is this one phrase that says any other unwelcome physical act, verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. So showing pornography and demand or request for sexual favors. So in this, how this definition has been interpreted by different courts across the country is that anything that the person on the receiving end is finding to be unwelcome, if that person is feeling threatened, if that person feels that they cannot work peacefully in that environment because it is so hostile, and you can never really be sure of the sexual intent of the other person, because remember, this is not just about redressal or protection, it's also about prevention, it's also about prohibition. So the focus, the entire understanding of what sexual harassment amounts to under this particular act and what are your rights at workplace, they will depend on how you, as a receiver of something, as a recipient, as being on the other side of it, how are you feeling about it? So it is extremely, extremely subjective, something that we may be taking as a joke, something that may not really bother us, will or may be bothering somebody else. So if it is bothering them, and if it is preventing them to from working peacefully, from working productively, from working happily, then it is sexual harassment. So are there any questions or any doubts till now? We'll move to certain reported cases and some examples of harassment at virtual workplace that have taken place recently. But before we do that, are there any questions, anything that you'd like me to clarify about everything that we've discussed till now? If there are no questions, then you can just write no in the chat box. If there are any, you can write yes, and I'll wait for your question, or you can unmute yourself and you can talk to me. Because this is really important for you to understand. It's just not for me to say out loud, but really for you to understand on a daily basis how this works and why it's important to have this law for you. For the longest time, we said that a lot of you are from LSR. So, I'm also from LSR, Lady Shri Ram College. And at that point, this phrase, I was introduced to this quote that said that personal is political. For the longest time, women were confined to within the four walls of their homes. They were made to just understand life from the perspective of how to run the kitchen, how to, bring up children, how to make sure you're taking care of your elders, and that's it. And after so much rebellion and so many arguments and so much fight, that women really earned their right to go out into the world and be working as something else other than homemakers or housewives. And when they started doing that, these were other ways of suppressing their voice. These were other ways of making sure, or telling them that their place lies within their homes, within the safety of their homes. And to protect women from that, to prevent from that happening, to prevent from women getting deterred to really go out and live their life and do what they want to do, these laws are in place. So it's really important to not just know that, okay, we have these rights and everything, but also to know when it's happening or when it may happen, so you can stop it. You yourself are going to be your savior. You yourself are going to be your protector. Nobody else will, come flying just trying to save you. And even if they do, just tell them to, you know, just go away, because it's you. It's all about you. And you should be empowered enough to be able to do that for yourself. So, okay. No, I don't see any questions as of now. If there are any, if you can think of any questions, if you want me to repeat anything, please feel free to put that in the chat box, and I'll keep checking it every now and then. Now, some examples of how sexual harassment happened at virtual workplace recently during the pandemic, the cases that were reported, the things that women were facing during the lockdowns and things like that. So before that, you have to understand that what is the result of these activities, these untoward gestures and untoward actions of people around women trying to harass them. So there is an implied or explicit threat of detrimental treatment in her employment. So there's a, it can be implied also, it can be explicit also, that if you do this or if you don't do this, then you may lose your job, or you may lose your promotion, or you may lose whatever it is, whatever benefits that you are getting, you may lose them if you don't do this or if you do this. There can be implied or explicit promise of preferential treatment in her employment. So I know that all of you understand what that means, that if you do this, then you'll be getting some advantages, you'll be getting some, we'll cut you some slack, you'll be getting some bonuses, you'll be getting some trips, or things like that. You'll be treated in a very, very good manner provided you do this. It can be anything at all. Implied or explicit threat about the present or future employment status, humiliating treatment likely to affect health or safety. So humiliating the woman and making sure she feels so broken, and her confidence and everything else is so shattered that she's not in a position to really raise her voice or say anything back to you, or even try to think of exerting her rights or enforcing her rights. So to do that, because there's an implied or explicit threat that today or tomorrow you may lose your job, you may lose your bonuses, you may lose, because that's the power that your employer holds over you. Your salary, your bonuses, your appraisals, your perks, your position in the company or wherever you're working. So there can be implied or explicit. Now remember, all of these things are given in the act also, and the words that have been used are implied or explicit, so they don't really have to be direct threats. They can be implied also, or they can be implied or explicit interference with work, or creating an intimidating or offensive or hostile work environment. So creating a hostile work environment is also sexual harassment. Not allowing you to work peacefully, productively is also sexual harassment. Micromanaging with an aim to get you to do something you don't want to do, otherwise you lose this or you lose that, that is also sexual harassment. Now these were some reported cases. So singling out and humiliating her in meetings or shouting to assert authority, sharing sexual, sexist, offensive images, videos, website links, memes, gifs, jokes, either through messages or verbally. Colleagues showing up inappropriately or underdressed for official meetings. Taking and circulating screenshots of colleagues without their permission. That is also sexual harassment. Messaging, calling incessantly at odd hours. Writing, sharing about feeling lonely, passing comments on physical appearance. Scheduling meetings at late hours. Pajama meetings. There were really reported cases on these lines, on these terms, insisting the female colleagues to switch on their video. So all of these instances, these are some ways in which harassment has been teleported, or how harassment has gone to homes of women when work from home was taking place. And a lot of the times there were a lot of women who did not really have a specific workplace at home, and they were in their rooms, or they were trying to make do at their dining rooms, or so on and so forth, and from there forcing them to turn on their cameras, or having meetings at odd hours, just because they can, calling them at odd hours and things like that. All of that amounted to sexual harassment in virtual workplace. Now, how to identify yourself as a harasser or a harassee? If you hold more power, if you abuse your power, if you are biased, if you are insensitive, if your ego is hurt and you don't really know why, if you cross the line as per someone else, if someone comes and tells you that you've crossed the line here, and you are in a position to cross that line and it being detrimental to somebody else, somebody who's in a lower position than you at work, then that will amount to harassment. And a lot of the times, I've seen people who rationalize these behaviors, people who think that, no, but I didn't mean that. That wasn't my intention. I was just trying to get the work done. I was micromanaging because she needed micromanagement. I was saying all of this because she needed to learn, and all of these things are just bullshit. Because what, women are so chewy mui types. Women are so sensitive that you can't really do anything. You can't really even say anything. How can you work with women like that and things like that? So they rationalize their behavior, and they rationalize their attitude like that. And then there'll be women, and I've seen this happen, where women in power would be like, but this is not what feminism is. Making women look so weak and this and that, and not being really harsh with them, and not telling them where their place is, completely based on their credentials and based on their where they come from, and the work they know, and the things they know and don't know. Not being honest with them is not what feminism is. And just because I'm a woman, it doesn't mean that I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that the other woman is feeling comfortable. She should make sure she's comfortable in work despite everything else. And why do you have to take cushion or just hide behind these laws and these rights and things like that? So there are women like that also, and there'll be ulterior motives for their behavior and for their rationalizing these behaviors. And these laws are not for you to feel like, oh my god, I can do this or I can't do this, but I don't know what to do and what not to do. But since I have these rights, so I might as well use them. It's not even like that. It's not even like you'll be treated as a chewy mui, or you'll be seen as a chewy mui, or somebody who's extremely sensitive if you just bring up your rights. It's not that either. You have to be extremely smart, and you have to be extremely well versed with what to invoke when is the limit, and what is to be done when. And we'll talk about these steps also in the coming slide, that when something like this happens, what should be your steps ideally, and how you should tackle the situation. But if it's happening, it's happening, and don't listen to what somebody else is saying or feeling or intending or not intending. It completely depends on how you are feeling, what you are going through. And if you are going through something, stand up for yourself. Don't ever think that, okay, aisa lag jayega ya waisa lag jayega ya. I know in real life it also gets very difficult, because there's a direct threat to your job, implied or explicit. There is. But then you have to ask yourself, would you really want to be in an environment like that? Will that really allow you to grow in the long term? So if you don't stand up, if you suppress your voice on your own and you keep enduring, then you are not doing right by yourself, and you want to be working like that. So that's also your choice. Now, as a harassee, you have to understand, if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling scared, even if somebody has not directly told you that you'll have to send me your picture, or you'll have to have this kind of chat with me, or you'll have to meet me here, even if they've not directly said that to you, but let's say a 40-year-old or 50-year-old senior, and these instances have happened. These are all things that happen in real life, where they'll be sending you messages and writing dear and things like that, or sweetheart, and professors and seniors talking to you like that, and they haven't really explicitly gone ahead to do something else, but you feel uncomfortable, you feel scared, you're mentally disturbed, you are constantly juggling with everything else in your life, and also making sure that your self-respect is intact. So how do you do that? You're completely disturbed, your self-esteem has been lowered. Did you brush something off as a joke but it truly hurt you? Do you feel wronged? If answer to any one of these questions is a yes, then identify yourself. If you are a harasser, if you are a harasser, if you are in a position of power, or if you're somebody who doesn't hold any power, but other people hold power over you, and that's a fact. So when something like that happens, and you have redressal mechanisms in place, and it's not just the law that I'm talking, I'm also going to tell you some things that may help from my personal experience and in my personal opinion. And you can take all of this with a pinch of salt, and you can also, please do not follow anybody blindly, and make sure that you're taking your particular situation into account and knowing, okay, these are the options that I have, which option suits me best at this point. So work towards that. The first thing that I would suggest is that you inform the harasser head on. And there might be counter views to this also, counter opinions to this also, where people say that, if you inform them, then they are already aware of everything that they can do. They'll destroy evidence. They'll be prepared in advance and things like that. So that is a possibility, provided the case moves forward. And then you have to go to the authorities and then lodge an official complaint. But a lot of the times what I've seen is that, very sadly, practically, when these proceedings take place in internal complaints committees, where sexual harassment has taken place, a complaint has been received, and gone on with the, with figuring out, has the accused actually done this or not, you'll see a lot of the times that, did this person inform this person that she was feeling this way? And then, we see these things, although there are laws in place to make sure it doesn't happen, that there's no detrimental opinion taken against the woman who's gone through something like this. But in real life, it happens that if she never told him, how would he know? If she never told her, how would he know? Things like that. So just to prevent that from happening, and also to prevent from being perceived as somebody who's scared, who's taken a step back, who can deal with and endure anything and everything, it's important to inform the harasser that you're not okay with their conduct. And I would suggest that you do that over email. Emails are recognized as acceptable pieces of evidence in the eyes of law. So even WhatsApp messages, but more than that, emails have a greater reliability value. So if you have, listed out just exactly what incident took place, when, how that made you feel, and let them know that this is not done, and you will not sit quietly, and you have to just back off. Whatever it is that you're feeling, send an email. If you don't have the email ID, send a WhatsApp message. If you don't, if even that doesn't work, send an Instagram message. Whatever it is, just have it in writing. Okay. The second step, if that doesn't work, warn the harasser that if their conduct is not rectified, a complaint will be, with evidence will be lodged. So you can do that in the first email itself. Or if you think you want to take it slow and you want to give that person a chance, maybe that person really doesn't know that they've made you feel uncomfortable, giving them the benefit of the doubt and things like that, then you can wait and see if it works. If it still doesn't work, you can give them a warning that an official complaint will be lodged. And this step is completely avoidable. If you don't want to give them a warning straight away, file a complaint, do that also. Okay, so it depends on your circumstances at that point. And then the complaint. So at workplace, it is mandatory wherever you're working. If the workplace has more than 10 employees, it is mandatory to have, for them to have an internal complaints committee. The internal complaints committee is made up of a presiding officer who's also an employee in the company at a senior position, and preferably, presiding officer has to be a woman. Then other two members can be men or women, and they also have to be the employees of that particular establishment. And one person is an external member who either is a lawyer, or has worked with an NGO or knows about women rights. Then that person is engaged as an external member, and that's what the ICC internal complaints committee is made up of. But you are not mandatorily required to file a complaint or lodge a complaint directly to the ICC. If you don't know who the ICC is, if you don't really know what the grievance redressal mechanism is, just inform somebody that you trust, somebody that you're comfortable with, and ask them, because at that point it can be traumatic, it can be difficult to talk about it. And trust me, even during these proceedings, you can make a request, you can make sure that your anonymity remains intact. Now, not to the harasser, harasser will obviously know, but if you don't want to come face to face with the harasser, you can let the ICC know. They'll take on the proceedings without you having to confront the harasser. You can request them to transfer the harasser somewhere else while the proceedings are going on, or to suspend them during the proceedings, because you're not comfortable around them. You can make those kinds of requests, and you can ask for you not having to come face to face with the harasser. And all the proceedings that take place, these complaints and everything else, it's ICC's duty to make sure that it's all confidential. So everybody else doesn't really get to play a part in this until and unless they're called as witnesses. And of course, there is gossip. There are things in workplace that you can't really shy away from or run away from. And even if that happens, just have that attitude. Try to have that attitude that you're not a victim, you're a survivor. And this is something that if you're doing this, then it automatically makes you braver than you think, and braver than anybody else. So this is not something that you should be ashamed of. This is something that the accused should be ashamed of. Okay, so ideally it is supposed to be confidential, but in practical scheme of things, confidentiality is rarely maintained. But anonymity can be asked for. You not having to face the harasser can be asked for, and it has to be strictly complied with. Again, it depends completely on the comfort level of the person who's been through something like that. So you can report to anybody you're comfortable with, even if not directly to ICC, and that person can then find who to approach and then lodge an official complaint. Now, as I told you, in colleges also there are internal complaints committee. So University Grants Commission, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal of Sexual Harassment of Workplace of Women Employees and Students in Higher Education Institutions, Regulations 2015. This is the law that governs sexual harassment at higher educational institutions. Now, how to make sure that your complaint is drafted well? Just either if you are drafting or somebody else is drafting on your behalf, that's all right. Make sure that it's within 3 months from the date of the last incident when you decided to lodge a complaint. Within 3 months, just file the complaint. Even even if you don't file the complaint within 3 months, the ICC does have the power to extend the deadline and to condone the delay, but that usually can also go against you, that why did you stay quiet for such a long period of time. So it's better to report as quickly as possible after you've made sure that nothing else really works. Or even if you don't want to make sure nothing else works, you just want to lodge a complaint, just do it as quickly as possible. So sorry, Vanchika has a question. I'm just reading that out. Sometimes such instances are brushed off, saying that they're vague. What can we do in that case? So in that case, as I was just going to make sure that you know how to draft your complaint well. So you have to be as specific as possible. I understand a lot of the times what we do is we want to forget that it ever happened. So we don't really want to recall just exactly what happened. But it's important to maintain a journal for yourself, to record just exactly what happened, when it happened, and to also make sure that you have the allied evidence in place, that if it was a message, you have screenshots with you. If it was a voice note, you have it with you. If it was, say, something happening on Zoom, you recorded it, you have it with you, you have the proof with you. You have to be that vigilant. So when people say that it's vague and everything, that's because the complaints a lot of the times are very poorly drafted. They're not specific. They're not talking about specific events. They're just saying that, this person has harassed me, or this person has made me feel uncomfortable, and that's that. But that, in that way, just also see how difficult you are making it for the ICC members to also investigate the matter and to come to a conclusion that this has really happened or not. Because the accused person here also will be given a chance to present his or her defense. So they'll be given a chance to really come out and say that it didn't happen and these are false accusations. And the POSH also has a provision that can penalize the woman, the aggrieved woman, if the complaint is false. So, just to make sure that the law is not abused, these provisions are in place. So the clearer you are, the better it is for you. And if it is really vague in your memory, if you don't have any evidence, or if you don't really, or if you can't really recall just exactly what happened, just try to find corroborative evidence, or try to talk to people that you think may have gone through the same thing. And then, you can get together and make sure that you're collecting evidence and then going to the ICC. Or you can report it to the ICC and let them know that this is what has happened, but you don't really have any evidence in place right now. But they can start investigating the matter, and you also on your end are trying to talk to people and trying to find corroborating evidence or things that he may have done to other people as well. Okay, just try to do that. Otherwise, it's very important for you to also be very vigilant and very, very careful. So when things like these are happening to you, you are very, very sure exactly what are the steps that you have to take. And that's why it's important to have these kinds of sessions and have this kind of knowledge. So address it to the ICC members and not the employer or the HR representative. So the ICC members are supposed to be detached from the employer or the main person who's in charge. So because the ICC members have to be completely unbiased. And that is why it's important to make sure that you're addressing your complaint to the ICC members. Then keep it concise, keep it simple, try to use bullet points and try to use chronological order. That first this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and now I'm filing this complaint because this has happened recently. The dates, the incident, the exact incident, the time, the list of witnesses. List of witnesses is the number of people who you think you can count on who can give a testimony in your favor on your behalf, and we can say that yes, we were there, we saw this happen. For example, I won't name any names. There was this one incident where in a virtual meeting, there was this one person, one employee, and they were having these team bonding sessions. And in that session, the employee, one male employee said to another female employee and wrote in the chat also that, your voice is so sexy. I love your voice. And I just want to listen to you all the time and things like that. And I follow you Instagram and also. So he wrote all of that in the chat. And there were 4 other people there. And when this happened once, then another time he tried to contact her independently and tried to say other things that made her uncomfortable. So these 4 people who were there in the meeting, they became her witnesses that yes, we saw these messages, even though those messages, even if those messages could not be retrieved, those witnesses could say that we saw these messages, we were there in the meeting, we know this happened. Okay, so that's where your list of witnesses come into play. Circumstances preceding and following the incident must also be recorded. So whatever happened before the main thing happened and what happened after the main incident happened. So what happened before, what led to the event, and afterwards, what were your first steps? Who did you talk to? What happened? What did you think about? How did you feel? It is also something that you must record. Then mention if the respondent was informed and warned before. If you have already informed and warned them, just mention that. Mention the date and the time of the message or the email and say that you've already tried to resolve it at your end, but it did not work. You have to mention that. Attach supporting documents in any format, relevant emails, screenshot of SMSs, WhatsApp messages, call details, photos, recordings, etc. Whatever you have, collect them and make sure you're attaching them to your complaint. Give details of the respondent, the name, the designation, the reporting structure, subordinate, colleague, superior, etc. Whatever you know about the respondent, the accused person, just give those details. Do not state anything that is false or incorrect. Be very, very careful at your end that you're not exaggerating, you're not adding on to the events on your own. Specify the exact relief that is sought from the employer. This is very important. So the way ICC works is something I'll just tell you. But what the powers that ICC has is that they can recommend the employer to take certain punitive measures or some penalizing actions. So they can penalize the respondent within the organization. So one way to do that is to, lead to their demotion or to lead to a transfer or suspension or just fire them in extreme circumstances, or, get the employers held to lodge an official FIR against the person and, make sure that it doesn't happen again. Whatever is the relief that you are seeking, as somebody who's gone through that, whatever you want from the employer, make sure you're stating that explicitly in your complaint. Now, how will the ICC proceed? First of all, they receive the complaint, so they can, it can be either via email, text, or however they, so it is the company's duty to make sure that the details of the ICC members are also available everywhere. If you don't know, you can't find them on the website, you can't really identify who are the ICC members, you can always go to your HR or anybody else from the company who is answerable. Just go to them and ask them, please give me the details of the ICC members. Who are the ICC members? They're supposed to display it everywhere. Then anybody can file a complaint on behalf of somebody who's gone through it, or the aggrieved woman can do it herself. Then once the complaint is received, it should be received within 3 months from the date of last incident that occurred. After receiving, proceedings will start and they have to be concluded within 3 months. So these proceedings will be the ICC members coming together, discussing, investigating the matter, calling the accused person to give their defense. If you do not want to be in the same room, then you can just say that, I will not be present there. That's it. And they can conduct their investigation themselves. And if there are any counter questions, so we call this cross examination. If there are any counter questions that the accused person or the respondent wants to ask you to disprove your case or to disprove your complaint, then they can just give those questions in a written format to the ICC members, and the ICC members can forward those questions to you. You can just answer them in writing and give them back. You don't have to be there in, there physically or virtually. Then after the proceedings are concluded and it is decided by the ICC members whether the respondent is guilty or not, based on that, they'll prepare a report, and within the report, there'll be recommendations to the employer. और employer को within 10 days वो report मिल जानी चाहिए, within 10 days from the date of conclusion of the investigation. Then after that, the employer mandatorily has to take action on the recommendations within 2 months. So the employer can either choose to take the recommendations exactly how they are given, or they can also choose to not follow the recommendations and do what they think is best. And then there's a provision of appeal also. So if somebody is aggrieved from the recommendations, if the employer did or did not do something, then the aggrieved person can also go to the court within 90 days from the date of those recommendations. They can go and appeal against whatever the employer has done. Then these are some punishments that can be given. These are very general. They depend in universities. What happens is that the UGC has the final say in punishing the accused persons who have been held guilty. Then they punish them accordingly. Either they'll fire them, or they, or if the college is seen to be not safe for women, then they can, just take the grant back or make sure that they're blacklisted and things like that, depending on the severity of what has happened. They can have their own punishing methods in universities, in companies, or in any workplace. Generally these are the steps that are followed depending on the severity of the impact on the complainant: written apology, warning, community service, counseling, transfer, halting promotion or increment, demotion, and finally termination. Then with this we have come to the end of the workplace harassment laws that are in place. And now we will go on to some other rights that women have at workplace. But before that, we have a question from Anushka. Anushka has asked, if the situation is serious enough and the matter is taken to the court and the harasser is found guilty by the ICC, is the organization under any obligation to financially support the harassed employee during the litigation? So there are no laws in place to mandate that, but it depends on the company policy if they want to, or if they can, or they can't, but what they try to do is they try to assist the woman in lodging the FIR and going to the police station and being present for the hearings, but the litigation expenses are not usually covered by these workplaces, although women do have right to free legal aid. Okay, so women can be represented without having to pay anything regardless of her financial situation, and that is also a right that is placed on women. And if there are any other expenses, then what usually happens is that you can claim those expenses as compensation from the accused person if they are held to be guilty by the court also at the end of litigation. So the court has the power to grant that compensation to you. And the court can also order compensation to the company or the ICC members if it was not properly constituted, if it did not properly conduct the proceedings, if it did not really do everything it was supposed to do. Then the court can ask for compensation from the company also for the accused, for the complainant. So I hope that's clear. And another thing is that the companies and the enterprises organizations, they are mandatorily required to follow the rules and regulations and the law under POSH Act. If they don't, then there can be a fine that exceeds up to 50,000 rupees. And if they repeatedly don't follow these rules and laws and regulations, then their license can be revoked in whichever industry they're working. Then now other laws that women have at workplace. So Maternity Benefit Act of 2017 amendments are taking place where women are entitled to 26 weeks of paid leave after giving birth to a baby. If it's a third child, then they are entitled to get 12 weeks. If they have adopted a child below 3 months, then they are entitled to get 12 weeks paid leave from the company, from the organization. Now there's interestingly a provision for commissioning mother also. Commissioning mother is somebody who has given her embryo to another woman who is a surrogate to give birth to her baby because of some medical condition that she can't. Then she's a commissioning mother, and after she gets the baby in her hands, she gets 12 weeks of paid leave from her organization. Now, this can be any organization which has minimum 10 employees. And again, they are supposed to follow these laws that are under Maternity Benefit Act. Prenatal leave is also given of 8 weeks. Medical bonus of 3,500 rupees. Then pregnant women and lactating mothers further draw a benefit of rupees 6,000 under the National Food Security Act of 2013. Then in an establishment of 50 plus employees, a crèche facility is to be provided by the employer. If a woman has gone through tubectomy, then she is entitled to get a 2 weeks paid leave. If she has any critical illness after maternity, then she is entitled to get 1 month paid leave. And there's another provision that says that she cannot be fired during her maternity leave. And all of these benefits are given under the Maternity Benefit Act. Now, this is also a very progressive and revolutionizing law that at least accepts and acknowledges the fact that it's not just women's duty to bring up the next generation. So they are entitled to get some benefits from where they are working, and they should not always be expected to either choose work or their baby or their home. And they should be taken care of in these times, even if they are working, and especially if they are working. Then the Code of Wages Act lets you claim equal pay. So there was Equal Remuneration Act of 1976, which has now come under the Code of Wages Act. So you can claim equal pay for equal work in an organization. Employers must pay male and female employees equally for the same position. Also, employers cannot discriminate against women during hiring process. So that those rights are given under this act. Then Shops and Establishment Act protects women. So this act, it actually depends on the state. So every state has its own Shops and Establishment Act, which actually pertains to all the enterprises and the companies and the other buildings, other working buildings where people are working commercially. They are all under the purview of this act, and this act protects women employees who work night shifts. So in this, you'll find the provision where it is the employer's duty to make sure that if a woman is working at night, late at night, or is made to stay after 7 p.m., then the employer has to provide for her safe travel back and forth. Then recently, these are some interesting progressive developments in a motor accident claim case where you claim insurance after somebody passes away in an accident. Recently, Supreme Court has held that there should be notional income for a non-earning homemaker also. So a homemaker who is made to do everything under the sun and is doing that for free for years and years and without any gratitude from anybody a lot of the times. So that homemaker has also been recognized as an earning member, at par with an earning member of the family by Supreme Court. It was a very progressive judgment, and they said that notional income should also be accounted for a non-earning homemaker when it comes to motor accident claims. Then women have right not to be arrested before sunrise and after sunset, especially not without the presence of a female police officer. And there can be exceptional circumstances where there's a order from the magistrate for the arrest to take place urgently when it comes to extremely dangerous cases. But usually women cannot be arrested at night. And there is another menstruation benefits bill that's still pending. It hasn't received its final assent. It hasn't become a law yet. But there have been talks and there have been arguments, and there have been companies who've already incorporated these things in their policy. Zomato, it gives 10-day period leave for women every year. And so in this bill, these were the asks that you give 2 days menstruation leave every month to women and better resting facilities. And Bihar is the only state to provide these facilities and these leaves as period leaves since 1992. Then women have right to free legal aid under legal service authorities regardless of affordability. Then they have right to anonymity in sexual assault, harassment, rape cases. Their name, their identity is not to be revealed in these cases. Right to register virtual complaints. So if a woman has to register a complaint in a police station, they can register a virtual complaint. They can just call, and or they can send an email in cyber cell also, in women's cell also, and it is a police's duty to send somebody at home to record their statement as a victim, as a survivor, as a witness, anybody. So women don't really have to go to the police station, and they can also register zero FIR. Zero FIR is basically if an incident has taken place, say in Delhi, and you're living in Gurgaon, then you don't have to go to Delhi to lodge the complaint. You can just go to the nearest police station, or you can call somebody from the nearest police station and get an FIR registered there, and then the police station will automatically transfer the complaint to the police station in Delhi. Then right against indecent representation, there's a law that prevents people from posting pictures or videos or anything else that indecently represents a woman's body. So there's a specific law against that. Now, thank you for listening, guys. You all have been incredibly patient, and with this, we come to the end of the session, and I hope we can have some questions and some discussions. Let's keep each other safe and let's learn and grow together. Thank you so much for bearing with me. So over to you, Akanksha, Anushka, Karishma.
That was indeed an insightful one. Thank you so much, ma'am. And we can now open the floor for discussions, questions, whatever you have. I have a lot to say, but I'll wait for others.
Thank you so much.
Okay, not only just questions, if you have any incidents in particular that you want to share, and maybe we can analyze it here, or you're confused about, we can just sit, keep it, consider it to be a safe place, please.
I'll also stop recording. Just one second.